Hi there, and welcome to Mike Caston and Peter Abrahamson talking about mental health, well-being, or poor mental health in the legal profession. Mike is a lawyer, I'm a therapist, and we're having sort of 10-minute thereabout conversations about topics that are either very in and trending or something we've been thinking about for a long time. Totally unscripted, and we may or may not agree, but we certainly hope that you will find some stuff that you think is worth listening to in our conversations. And something I have been looking at for a while is lawyers and negativity, lawyers and negative thinking, as if they are sort of, when I've been working with lawyers in my previous life, not as a therapist, but as a user of lawyers, it has all been about finding fault, finding the things that the other side forgot, making sure the contract is to your advantage and almost the disadvantage of the other party. And it has to come from somewhere. So are you being trained at university to think negatively, just to spot the errors and the omissions and get one over the other party? And then I suppose you are being paid to do that. And if I were in that position, having to think negatively all the time, I have heard from other lawyers that it affects their home life. They suddenly become very critical of the restaurants they go to, the shows they're watching. Oh, it could be better. Oh, it wasn't up to scratch. Or, always having the critical angle as in negative critical, not just critical as in, I can think about these options. So is negativity actually killing creativity and opportunity? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's one that I never really thought about all that much until actually earlier this year when I heard Dr. Martin Seligman. He's a positive psychologist,
Mhm.
speaking at the Institute for Wellbeing in Law conference on this topic exactly. So I think taking a step back, just human beings in general, I think we are very judgmental. We're constantly having judging thoughts about other people and about ourselves. And a lot of times those thoughts are negative or we're very hard on ourselves. So I think part of that and becoming aware of that and trying to sort of reframe that is I'm a work in progress there. But I think the interesting question is it even more exacerbated in the law? Like, are we actually taught, or does it sort of self-select for people that are pessimistic because you're supposed to be thinking about and accounting for all the bad things that could happen, or do issue spotting? And I think there is something to that. Dr. Seligman's talk was really interesting because he did a study of all of the careers. And it's true of all careers except one that optimistic people, positive thinkers, are more successful in terms of doing better in those careers, doing better in school, making more
Mhm.
money. They're happier, they have better relationships. And the one outlier is, surprise, surprise, the legal field, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So the question is why? Like, why is that? So some of it, I think, comes down to that lawyer type of always sort of being trained to spot the problem and talk about the problem and try
Mhm.
and fix the problem. I think that's part of it. I think other reasons might be, and I'm speculating because I'm not a scientist, but another reason might be that we're always someone else's agent. So there might be a feeling of sort of a lack of agency that's also associated with
Mm.
being a pessimist rather than an optimist, or not feeling like your view matters. So I think, but I think it seems like there are characteristics that people associate with being a lawyer type. I think, like all generalizations, they're not always 100% true, but have some truth. And negative thinking and being a perfectionist and being judgmental, I think those all kind of go together. So I guess my answer is sort of maybe. It's an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I don't think it's a definite this, that, or the other answer. I'm just I'm just wondering whether there's a bit of stereotyping going on, because I get a lot of what do you want to work with lawyers for? Those bastards from people outside of the legal profession. It so happens I like the legal profession. I at some point wanted to become a lawyer, but didn't, and that's another story for another day. But there is this expectation that you are nasty people, that you are negative people, that you are just out there to get as much money for as little work as at all possible and never give a straight answer, you know. So if you are met every day with this stereotypical attitude from the very people you're actually trying to help, then maybe that has an impact on the way you look at yourself all of a sudden.
Yeah, that's a super interesting point. And I think it is cultural also, because my experience with being a lawyer, I lived abroad in Japan for 2 years. And my experience with being a lawyer in the United States is when you tell someone you're a lawyer, people make lawyer jokes and poke fun at you, and it's but when I was in Japan, there are very, very few lawyers. It's very hard to become a lawyer, much, much fewer than the US, different culture. And when you tell someone you're a lawyer, they're like, wow, oh my God, super respectful, which is super interesting and it was very unusual for me. But I think that is part of it. You know, when I was talking about my Lawyering While Human project with a friend of mine, a good friend of mine who actually lives in Asia, he was joking with me and he said, you know, if you talk about sort of this, like, you know, kindness and sort of change the culture of lawyering to being more human, you know, you're going to kill all the lawyer jokes. And, you know, and I said, I mean, it was a little bit of a dark response, but I said something like, you know, I want to kill the lawyer jokes, you know, before we kill the lawyers. It's a race, because I think it does have a negative impact. It can cause people to be kind of self-critical and not consider, you know, what they're doing to be, you know, worthy. And it's interesting because in a lot of ways, it's like in some ways it's considered this really noble profession, like tied into government and making law and policy and philosophy. But you do get that stereotype that I think, you know, can be harmful and associated with kind of negativity. And I think that can bleed into the way people see themselves.
It's interesting you mentioned the lawyer jokes, because obviously, me being me, I think it's obvious then. I look up lawyer jokes, and they all revolve around the same few things. It's just variations on a theme, but it's all very negative. And I don't know whether lawyers actually laugh at themselves and those jokes. But if you look up psychologist or therapist jokes, you will also find a lot of stereotypical thinking. So I think we all guilty of having an idea about a profession before we even get to work with it.
But yeah, and I think it also comes to just like, again, like being more human and meeting people as who they are and how they treat you and what they do. And, you know, I don't see lawyers as ambulance chasers. I see lawyers as sort of creative problem solvers and advisors. And I like when I can be helpful to someone, you know, building something or dealing with a problem. But yeah, when I come back to that issue about jokes, I've thought about jokes a lot recently. I like jokes, but a lot of times when you criticize a joke, people say, oh, like, it's just a joke. You know, why are you so humorless? You know, Jerry Seinfeld gets mad at you for not letting comedians say what they want to say. And but I read this amazing article by this PhD in philosophy who wrote about jokes and kind of the way that jokes are used socially to kind of enforce in groups versus out groups.
Yes.
Jokes are incredibly powerful when you think about institutional issues like enforcing norms like racism and sexism and then other kind of these, and I'm not going to put them in the same category of prejudice, but these other sort of, you know, biases and stereotypes, they're really, really effective at reinforcing them. They're very powerful.
Yes, they are. So knowing all of this that we know, what do we do about it? Do you have the magic, the silver bullet that'll just fix the negativity issue in law and get it all to be a creative and vibrant?
Yeah, I thought that was your job. I'm just a lawyer.
It is partly my job.
I'll offer one thing, and then I'll kick it back to you. No pressure. No, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, again, like with judgmental thoughts, and this is something I learned as I got more into sort of mindfulness, which I never really thought about much before either, these past few years. But I think it starts with kind of self-awareness of actually like slowing down and realizing that you are being negative, or that you're not sort of seeing the whole picture. You're framing things in a way that's not really accurate. You're always kind of tending towards a negative. And I think once we can start to slow down and sort of challenge our own framing of things and be aware of it, I think it's possible to sort of reframe and relearn. And I know that, people who are way smarter than I am, like Dr. Seligman, he has all these techniques that show that, you're not stuck with this. Like there are techniques you can use to learn how to reframe things, so that you're less negative. And the mind is a really powerful thing. The way that you frame something, it really has a lot of power. So that's all I can offer there.
And I think that's a very good starting point, because if we start with ourselves, obviously, if you are at the top of your organization, if you have that positive frame of mind, that will trickle down, because that's what you expect of your associates and your employees. But if you take a contract, for example, instead of looking at it saying, let's find all the holes in this one, let's shoot this one into pieces. How about starting with, let's get the best contract from this we can at all. Let's cover all the bases, instead of let's cover our ass, let's cover all the bases. So it's very subtle changes in vocabulary and phraseology that can just make your mind think differently and then put a positive spin on it. And when you work with people in a positive way, they tend to come back for more, don't they? But if they have this stone-faced, arrogant lawyer that just looks at the letter of the law and black and white on paper, then you're not likely to go back for more, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a great point.
And go back for more. I need to go back for more coffee.
Sounds like a plan.
People need to go back to their desks or do what they were doing. So I'd like to thank everybody for having watched this conversation. And as always, give us your comments. If you agree with us, great. If you disagree with us, that's great as well. We want the conversation going. So thanks, Mike, for spending time again talking about these things. And thank you to all of you out there watching for staying with us for these 10, 15 minutes. See you later in another video. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.